Hello and good evening. You are watching the Policy Times, world's first policy and development media. Policy Times since last 4 years have been continuously working towards or in or with some sectors which are the foundational pillars for nation building. Whatever activity we do, there is only one thing that we want to achieve, that is nation building. Our nation, our societies have to grow with us. Education is the backbone. Since last especially during the pandemic, education is the sector which has been hit hard the most. However, especially in the subcontinent, from Dr. Blair, we will know more about how education impacted education in Europe and other parts of the world, because I want to also see a little comparison and comparative understanding about how much impact has it caused to different parts of the world. Today, we will talk on, these are two important areas. As pandemic, the good thing that pandemic has done is it has digitized education, and it has brought thousands of millions of students to the online platform. So now online has given them a lot of advantages. At the same time, there are a couple of disadvantages that we also need to study and learn. But everything has some positives and negatives. Today, what we would like to know and understand from our experts is how do we build today the global competencies and global skill sets in our students, especially post-pandemic. As we are all connected online, and being online means you are global. So, being digital, is the director of assessment and quality assurance schools and colleges. It's one of the most prestigious and premier institutions there, associates who have been working to improve the quality of education in different education institutions. With him, I have Professor Dr. Mohammed Asi Pasha, who is the Director of Admissions and Marketing at CMR University, one of the premier education institutions.
21st century skills in global competency, global learning, intercultural competence among today's generations of students. I have been working in international education now for some 30 years here in Paris, in U.S. study abroad, teaching in French and American universities with a focus on assessment and a most recent emphasis on integrating the sustainable development goals into some of these 21st century learning skills of global competency and intercultural learning. So I look forward to sharing with you a few of these ideas and discussions with my good colleagues here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blair. I will now request Dr. Asif Pasha to kindly briefly introduce us.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Scot, Blair, and good evening, Mr. Akram, and the people who are watching us online. And it's been an opportunity. Thanks for the opportunity, Mr. Akram. I am Professor Dr. Mohammed Asi Pasha, having 35 plus years of experience in transforming the universities, international schools, and the KG to PG education across India, particularly, and guided more than 10 lakh students across the students who have been guided by me, studying, settled down across the globe. And I'm the member for so many prominent associations like Hyderabad Management Association, NHRD, and so on. And I got the Global Teacher Award in the global recognition, as I had done. I had presided over more than 20,000 seminars or webinars in 10 years of time, and at the same time guided 10 lakhs and above students across the globe. And now I'm heading I'm as the Director of Admissions and Marketing for CMR University. I'm taking care of entire India and operations and transforming this university to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Blair and Professor Pasha. Wonderful to have you both coming from different, again, 35 years of experience and then a couple of decades of experience for Dr. Blair, which means we can have, almost a couple of books on education and a lot of success stories in different parts of the world. I'll come to Dr. Blair now. Number one, how is education, how is education being impacted by the pandemic, especially in Europe, especially in France and other parts of the world? And then coming to how are you working on building global competency and global skill sets among students? And how can we do that? And what kind of collaboration do you think we can build between India and Asia and America, or the European and American standard of education? Dr. Blair.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me begin the response to some of these questions with just a quick overview of how we got to global competency, global learning, and some of these 21st century skill sets. And our concern really begins with the process of globalization. This shouldn't really send any of us to the dictionary because we know that globalization at its most general level stresses worldwide interdependence, stretching beyond national, regional, cultural, and ethnic boundaries. Globalization really is all about this cross-border movement of people and ideas, goods, capital, labor, and services. And of course, this is what has led us to our recent decades of trade liberalization, deregulation, reduced public spending, outsourcing, and offshoring. And it's also, in fact, globalization has indeed created a global movement of pathogens, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. We also know that it has led to the mobility of pollution and illicit trafficking and human rights abuses. So intelligent people can certainly argue compellingly on the relative costs and benefits of globalization. But I think what we can agree upon is that a globalized world is very much here to stay. It's bringing with us many challenges. We have to work within a globalized world, however much we want to change it. And of course, it's this process of globalization that has really led us, all of us in international education, to focus on this concept of internationalization. Internationalization really is the response that universities and public educators have come up with to deal with this process of globalization. How do we deal with this movement of people's ideas, goods, capitals, and services in a way that we can integrate this into the learning of our students and adapting and changing our universities so that they are in line and in phase with this new global world in which universities exist, in which students continue to learn, in which we educators continue to teach. So it's really globalization that has created internationalization. As we see, the impulse behind internationalization is really simply to adapt our educational structures to this changed world and environment in which we educators find ourselves. And again, I don't think we want to spend too much time about defining internationalization. I think this is now a well-established concept within international higher education. But of course, we're attempting now really to infuse international and comparative perspectives into our teaching and our research missions of higher education. So this is really the impulse behind global competency and the skills that go with it, is attempt to educate our students in ways that align with the needs of the 21st century economy, the types of challenges that they will face in the future, the types of skill sets they will need to survive and thrive in this changed world. And let me just say a word about the vocabulary of global competency, because indeed there are many different words and concepts that we use in higher education to describe this concept. Today's talk, of course, is about global competency and the skill sets that go with us. But it also is often referred to as global learning. And there are a whole host of synonyms that we often hear in the field of a global perspective, global knowledge, global citizenship, global awareness, global engagement, global education. And similarly, we're very much focused on the intercultural aspects of this new and changed world that we face here. So there's another sort of list of vocabulary words that we often use in the field to describe these processes, such as intercultural assimilation, intercultural competence, intercultural sensitivity, intercultural knowledge, civic engagement, social responsibility. So there are lots of words and concepts that are out there that are trying to capture the challenge educators face today of what types of skill sets they need to teach to students and what types of skill sets these students will need for the 21st century. But just to complete this idea of what are some of these attributes, obviously we're speaking about an entire set of knowledge, skills, and attitudes that make up global competency and its corresponding skill sets. Indeed, much of the aspects of global learning and global competency are very much in line with traditional liberal arts education. We want to help students develop a knowledge that allows them to make sense of the world. We want them to develop intellectual and practical skills so that they can use their minds to solve problems and deal with complexity and engage with diversity. And of course, we want to foster in them a sense of attitudinal development, where they develop a strong sense of social responsibility towards others and towards one's own integrity. So we can continue on this when we speak again, going back to this knowledge concept, that is needed to make sense of the world. We want students to develop this knowledge of other cultures, the nature of the interconnectedness of societies and peoples and cultures. We want them to develop a sense of world history, world religion, the nature of global economics. In terms of some of the practical skills, there, of course, we're very much focused again on some of these intercultural skills of intercultural competence, diversity, education, the ability to see the world through the eyes of others, to view the world of other peoples and cultures. And of course, in terms of these attitudinal changes that we're looking to develop towards one's own sense of integrity and engaging with society, obviously we want students to be able to engage with global realities and global challenges, problems such as sustainability, global pandemics, global needs with respect to human rights and poverty and inequality. Lots of attitudinal differences and challenges that need to be incorporated into the educational agenda. And let me just make reference to an interesting definition and rubric that you may be familiar with. Indeed, I'm sure many of you are. The AAASC has developed the Global Learning Rubric. It's called the Value Rubric. AACNU that is based in Washington, D.C., and has developed a large number of teaching and learning good practices with respect to global competency, global learning, intercultural competence. I recommend these to you. They are quite effective in describing and defining many of these different concepts within global competency and demonstrating the different levels of acquisition of these skills and attitudes and knowledge values. So let me just transition here over to back to you, Akram, and to you, Professor Asi Pasha. These are some of the skills, knowledge, skills, and attitudes now that becomes a real challenge to develop in terms of a post-COVID world in which student mobility has been so significantly reduced. Indeed, the context in which these knowledge, skills, and attitudes are best developed, of course, is being immersed into foreign countries, foreign cultures, foreign societies, engaging with other peoples, with other students, with other communities. And of course, this is the big challenge of how do we actually do this when so many of our students, as you mentioned, are now attempting to gain these skills and knowledge and attitudes online through virtual platforms, through online meetings such as this, as opposed to the really hands-on experiential learning that takes place within the context of cultural immersion. So these introductory points here just sort of sketch out sort of a little bit where we've been on how we got to the importance of global competency, the importance of integrating that into an experiential learning experience for the students within foreign cultures and places and societies, how much that has been reduced recently because of the global pandemic of COVID-19, and how we educators now need to find ways to sustain this type of learning, knowledge and skills and attitudinal acquisition through these virtual platforms. The challenge is significant, as you mentioned. There are advantages and disadvantages. more and more people are able to join into many of these learning platforms online, but they may not be quite as immersive and interculturally challenging as the on-site physical presence would be. So I will stop there and turn the floor back to you for ongoing comment and discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Blair, for your very brief but meaningful remarks. I'll come to Dr. Pasha. Dr. Pasha, you have been observing India. You have been observing South Asia pretty well, since you have very gross presence across the region, and also, your deep experience and interaction with students. What would be your reaction and respond to a couple of the questions I see you at the beginning?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Blair, and thanks, Mr. Huck. And rightly said, as per the Blair statement, that now a global competency needs the knowledge, the education, the cross-culture exposure as well. Particularly in the Indian perspective, to see that before the pandemic situation, before COVID-19, the situations were different. And at the same time, the people were used to go to conventional colleges as well. In 2 years of time, particularly Indians are habitual now to the online or virtual platforms. Before that, they are not up to the mark, and they could not even attend the virtual webinars or virtual conferences. Now the scenario has changed, and this pandemic has learned something, and we got some. The students as well got trained and habitual to attend the online classes as well. Even though the percentage was less in the COVID-19 in the last year, when we see the worst pandemic, the start of the pandemic situation, the attendance are the students attending the classes are because of the so many situations at their homes. After 1 year, the vaccination is going on. Almost 70-60% of the Indians got vaccinated, and it's going on. The process is continuously, and the people are now habitual and learn something which you need to be. You need to be have the global competency to face the challenges, or to study or to compete with each others, or to get the placements or internships anywhere, any part of the globe where you go. That is what I mean. After the pandemic, we see that now the little bit confidence is being building in the students as well, and they are very, very much and keen to go ahead, and they are already learned and they understood that now in the future everything will be online. The future is all about. After 2025, or you can see as per our education policy, national education policy, the proposed policy is also that we see that the future of the education is online completely. Online learning, online transformation, everything. So every student should undergo this pandemic. They should come out of the pandemic situation and learn the global competencies, which helps them to build their careers. Not only that, and we are also imbibing so many latest technologies in our curriculum as well. Like in the early COVID-19, last if you see in perspective. Before 5 years, there were only BTech journal, Bachelor of Technology journal. Now, after 5 years now, now we are launching the artificial intelligence, data science, robotics, cybersecurity, machine learning, IoT, cloud computing, and so on. These are the global competent programs which enables a student to compete with the global standards as well, and global students as well. Because now the students want to pursue MS in US or UK, Australia as well. Particularly, the Indian students are more, intent towards or inclined towards that. So they are lacking behind before that. Now this pandemic, now they have come up with the because they are going through the hands-on experience, the experiential learning through the online platforms as well, and they're able to learn so many things through the online as well. And at the same time, we are also giving the webinars to the students by making the interaction with the noble personalities like Dr. Blair and Akram Saab and so many people from different parts of the different areas of the studies. And at the same time, we are encouraging the students to be part, to learn the new things, to compete with the global students as well, where they can build their careers, they can work anywhere, they can transform their lives any part of the globe. Wherever they go, they are ready. They are ready to perform. So that is, global competency is very much indeed very, very important requirement now in the Indian perspective. At the same time, the parents also now got some awareness in recent 3-4 years. If I observe, particularly in interacting with the students and parents, the parents are also keen. Sir, my ward wanted to study artificial intelligence. My ward wanted to study machine learning. So we don't want to take any options. Just we'll go ahead with that. So they are keen and they are doing the research and coming down to us and sir, I want to join BTech artificial intelligence, data science, robotics, like this, cybersecurity. These are the happening areas of the global scenario, and the globalization has much more impacted in initiating so many global competencies which should be inbuilt to perform or to excel in the careers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Pasha, giving that perspective from the Indian context. And I think a lot of points that came. So first, we're talking about the global skill and global competency that comes with global integration. I think what I understood from both speakers is that the first part we should talk about that how our curriculum or I think system is allowing us to integrate with the global ecosystem or global knowledge system, knowledge base. And then we are talking about various perspectives, like cross-cultural, sympathetic empathy for cross-cultural exchange. That is also very important. Within India, India itself is a world. It has various cultures, various, ethos, various region. Every state has its own culture. Even within a state, if you go 100 kilometers, the culture, food, everything changes. So this is such a diverse country, and India is actually coping up with this diversity and actually entertaining itself with the diversity since the beginning. I think that has great also advantage, and also I think we are taking the leverage of. Now I'll come to Dr. Blair on another important perspective that we're talking about global competency and global skills. What role can accreditation play? So, there are a lot of educational bodies, regulatory bodies, we can say, in India. For school education, there are several regulation bodies. They also do a lot of quality control measures. For higher education, there are a lot of accreditation bodies. And there are global ranking platforms, whether QS ranking or Times Higher Education ranking. What role can an accreditation body, or where does the accreditation bodies fit into the entire picture, and what facilitating role does it play to uplift the standard of education that we are talking about?
Yes, thank you, Akram. Excellent question, and indeed an important question for the way in which I think we go forward and think about what constitutes a quality institution and what constitutes a quality education. Indeed, it is up to the accrediting bodies. And as you know, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of accrediting bodies around the globe, some of them more or less linked to governmental agencies, many of them private NGOs, working in virtually all aspects and all disciplines across educational structures across the globe. And I would hazard to advance that many of these accrediting agencies as well have to adapt to the process of globalization and internationalization as well. A lot of accreditation regimes still reflect very much sort of the national educational context in which they were originally created and in which their quality standards and indicators were drafted and adopted by the various boards and then used as the standard for compliance and conformity among the various national educational bodies. But of course, as I've said, we now live in a globalized world in which there's a great deal of mobility and intercultural interaction. So the accrediting bodies need as well to look at their own standards of good practice, the various indicators that they identify of what constitutes criteria for becoming accredited, and ensure that those standards and indicators are in phase with the types of global competency skills and learning needs of students in the 21st century. And just a few things come to mind that such standards should indeed reveal. Obviously, the engagement, the immersion, the experiential aspect of the educational teaching and learning process is critical. We know that students learn best when they feel engaged and connected and actively integrating the various tasks and activities of the learning objectives and hoped for learning outcomes. The old model of a sage on a stage, as opposed to the instructor as a guide by your side, is a model that certainly needs to be retired. So that accrediting bodies very much encourage institutions to engage in these types of very active pedagogical strategies that get students involved and connected in the great problems of today. And I think the example that comes to mind most easily, of course, is the embedding of these sustainable development goals into the ethos and outcomes of educational structures and the actual curricular development within various educational institutions. We need to learn different things to deal with the new types of problems we're faced with in the 21st century. And I think accrediting bodies have a very powerful platform to use, if they so decide to do so, to really present a number of carrots and sticks, I suppose, to help universities begin to adapt and change their practices to become more forward-looking, focus on some of the issues of foresight, intelligence, thinking really about what types of pedagogical models, curricular courses, and developmental strategies both will empower students best for the 21st century and giving those students the best chance of actually coming up with solutions to deal with problems such as climate change, declining biodiversity, global pandemics. I would again hazard to say that many accrediting agencies still have some work to do to become better stewards of the agenda of teaching and learning in the 21st century. So I would suggest that that's the way in which they can play a role, is by adapting and changing their standards and indicators in ways that really encourage universities to modernize, to innovate, and to integrate many of these new teaching and learning strategies that are necessary to deal with the types of problems and challenges that we and certainly students in the 21st century are going to face.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blair. Again, giving that comprehensive structure about the positioning of accreditation bodies into the, playing role in the improving the standard of the education institutions and providing the global competencies. I'll come to Dr. Asif now. Dr. Asif, now different Indian universities, if we talk about now, I feel the university, if you see the 1,000 universities that we have, they are categorized some top class, some average, medium, and some very below standard. And then if you fit the 50,000 colleges that we have, 50,000 plus colleges that we have, again, they have similar standards. Some are top class, some are very high rated, good quality, some are medium, average, and then below standard. Huge, just like the inequality in the country, economic inequality, regional disparity, we have the similar kind of diversity in our education standard, education quality. So coming to an institution at the institution level, since you are heading a very important portfolio and division, how do you think that Indian universities can work on, or in which areas Indian universities need to work on, and which departments and divisions should the colleges or universities work on to build that global competitiveness or global standard skill sets? And what kind of international collaboration or domestic collaboration can be explored between the education institutions with the industry and all, so that we achieve some uniformity? I expect that it is not possible because Oxford cannot be compared with anyone. That disparity or difference will always be there, but there has to be some uniformity where the below line has to be somewhere. We have the global poverty line. So there has to be a global education line or a domestic education line, national poverty line or national education line, below which it should not be allowed or something like that. Can we have some standard, or what is your experience?
Yeah. Thank you. Very good, very important question Mr. Akram has raised now. Because as our Indian government is looking forward to the national education policy, as you are aware of that. Hope Scot, this is a new education policy is upcoming in coming years. proposed by the government of India now to implement in coming years now. As Mr. Akram asked that, what is the uniformity or the platform which takes our universities to the global level? So when we should, particularly in the Indian scenario, we should emphasize more on the research-based curriculum and research-oriented curriculum, which enables the students ready for the industry. Normally, he should not be a student in the classroom where he could not able to perform coming out of that, getting a degree, but is not having the skill set which is required by the industry. That should not be done. That particularly in the Indian scenario, that is what I feel with my 25, 30 years of experience almost, that we should, more our universities and our education system should more emphasize on the global competency, which is very, very essential to each and every student who can compete with any part of the global student. So based on that, that's what, as I told you earlier also, that we are, now we are imbibing our curriculum with the latest innovative, disruptive technologies as a global perspective, particularly like artificial intelligence, data science, particularly data science or machine learning, where our university should also go through that research. At the same time, we should have the platforms where the students can interact with the international professors. They should go through their experiences, what they have gone through their life. As the rich people are there, rich experienced professors are like that, Dr. Scot, Blair, and so many on in the global scenario, where every university or every institution should get make a platform to the students where the students can interact with the professors, interact with industry people, or interact with the CEOs or vice president, president, or whatever the position they have, particularly the experienced people, because experience is a study of life. There's a problem with that. So what I mean to say, the students should go, and the students should also understand that what is going on US, what is going on UK, what is in Australia, what is the present scenario, what are the industries looking out, what are the competencies industries are looking out, not only the Indian perspective particularly, because if we want to compete with the global level people, we should have that skill set. That is, we should not emphasizing most of the universities, the countries are only, they think that getting the admission, teaching them and they are giving a degree and sending out them. They don't think about the competency which required in the universal level at the platform where he can perform any part of the globe. That is what I think, in my opinion, that we should be more concentrated or emphasize on that particular area where we should create a platform for the global universities to come here and be part of our curriculum, or we can invite their curriculum as well, or our curriculum can be imparted in their universities, or at the same time, we should take their help getting the international internships, particularly in so many universities across the country, particularly in India, that we struggle in getting the international collaborations, international internships, or international placements. Even we have, as you said, we have 1,000 universities approximately, but to what extent only the IIT or NIT students will get placed or get an international company offer, where normally the other universities like deemed university or central university or state university or private university, we have 4 categories of universities in the country. So I believe that our India should see in a global perspective and improvise the skill set of the student where he can be ready for the industry. We can, ready-made engineer for the industry. As at the same time, he not only in the Indian scenario or Indian perspective, he should be ready to work in Australia, ready to work in UK, ready to work in USA, or ready to work in Canada. That is what I believe, that we should emphasize on that particular aspect. And at the same time, we should take the curriculum, which is, which the industry is looking at, and what are the programs the industry is looking at, what are the competencies by the industries the people lead to the, impart in their projects, this guy can perform from the day one. So many areas which the people need to intensify in the aspect of developing the skill set of the students. That is what I believe. That is lacking. That is being. That is being continuously. It is a process, but we should more emphasize, particularly in the Indian universities. That is what I believe. Because even though so many students get a degree, Bachelor of Technology or Bachelor of Computer Applications or Master of Computer Applications, but he is not competing, he could not able to compete with other personalities, other students of the global scenario. That is what so many platforms are there now. Interacting, making the arrangements to interact with the global students to understand what they have learned and what is their perspective towards the opportunities to explore that or to utilize the opportunity. So many platforms now, like interacting with the, that should be a very, very important aspect, I believe, in my personal opinion, that we should emphasize more on the research-based curriculum, which is very, very important. And new age courses are required to to build our students to that level, or to make the students to the next level.
Thank you so much. Again, the Indian perspective is very interesting, and a lot of kind of collaboration you mentioned, you talked about. Let us now come to the conclusion part of it. I will request Dr. Blair. Blair, your closing remarks or closing comments, or any message for our educators, education institutions, or students, parents, or regulators, policymakers. If you really talk about building global competitiveness, global competency, and global skill sets, then where do we begin? How do we begin? And what role different stakeholder has to play so that holistically we achieve what we are dreaming of? Dr. Blair.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think there are two things we have to do to try to preserve, sustain, develop, and advance these global competency skills that students need so much. And again, I make these statements again in the context of the global COVID-19 pandemic that has so much restricted and limited traditional study abroad and student mobility. But as I said earlier, we have to live and work and teach in the world we find, not the world we so desire. So I think that the technology, the platforms, the online learning, online internships, these obviously have been developed because of the pandemic. Obviously, there was online learning in advance, but this has certainly been, as you mentioned earlier, far more advanced, far more extensively used across higher education. And I think, as you said, there are good things to this. It brings more students into contact with other peoples and places, admittedly on a virtual platform. But if these platforms are used intelligently, and if we give some real thought to how do we use these virtual platforms to achieve the learning outcomes we want in global competency, and use these tools in ways in which they do permit this same type of learning and skills and behavioral development to take place, then we need to do that as much as possible. Obviously, avoiding as much of the passive use of this technology as possible, and try to make that more active, more engaging, more interactive with the students. I think there's a lot of potential for us to improve the way in which we're developing, using this technology. Again, we're doing this quite recently. No one saw the pandemic coming, so it's natural that we're all scrambling a little bit to try to find best practices and effective pedagogical teaching methodologies here online. So let's do that, and let's do that well. Secondly, in terms of the more immersive experiential learning, and again, at a time in which student mobility is significantly depressed, let's look to, again, all of the opportunities we have in our own communities, within our own towns and cities, most of which are extremely culturally diverse, different cultures, different peoples, different traditions. We have ethnic and religious and cultural differences. We have generational differences. All of these types of differences exist within our communities. And it's really exposing students to these types of differences and helping them learn how to collaborate respectively and traverse cultural boundaries, to bridge differences. These are the rules and goals that we had for students through traditional study abroad, but we can probably just as well achieve those learning outcomes closer to home until student mobility comes back. Let's not look at the pandemic as a time in which intercultural learning can't take place because the students can't travel. There are lots of learning opportunities very close to home, and it actually is far more cost effective. In terms of the SDGs, it is far less of a polluting, carbon costly activity as well. And in many ways, the relationships and the community building that can be done often sustains our local societies and creates really important partnerships and relationships between our communities, our businesses, and our universities and our students. So I think there's real potential and hope there for learning in new ways in this post-pandemic world, but ways that will still be just as effective in terms of student learning outcomes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So I'll, Mohammed, Dr. Pasha, your remarks.
Yeah. This type of platforms gives more awareness, at the same time gives some confidence to the students and the people who are listening to us as well. Because most experienced Dr. Blair has shared his experiences and what are the policies to be imparted, what are the activities to be done on the global scenario, and the people should have come up with the skills which are skill set which are required in the global perspective. So I believe that this type of virtual events will help boost the confidence of the students and the parents to understand what is going on, what is the present scenario or global perspective, not only the Indian perspective. And I thank Mr. Blair for elaborating his views and giving the present picture of the global aspect. At the same time, I thank Ms. Sept for giving us the opportunity, to address this, on the online platform. Thank you for the time and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Blair. I'm looking forward to have and to collaborate with your esteemed organization as well. I'm looking forward and thank you, Ms. Sept. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Dr. Blair.
No, we look forward as well to maintaining this contact with you. And again, thank you for your insights as well. And for you, Akram, for the invitation. Much appreciated and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Blair and Dr. Pasha. Wonderful to have your experience, your views on the most important topic, because today everything is global and everything is digital. Let us take advantage of both. Whatever the future trend come, we must accept them openly and wholeheartedly. Those who accept change are actually the winners in long run. So I think with the both organizations representing here shared their valuable perspectives on this. If you like Policy Times to do this kind of program and deliver continuously, deliver knowledge, awareness, and what we are doing it, I invite you all to let us work together to bring change and development for our nation, for our society. Thank you. Keep watching.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Asif, are we